It's that time of the week once again. It is time for Geek Speak. And today we are going to be talking about Tag Manager, Google Tag Manager. What is it? Why should we use it? What's the best part about it? And of course, I'm myself. I am Phelan Lewis. I work with Pip at Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing. Time of the week once again. It is time.
And I was getting the stream up for us.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
It was perfect timing for right when you started talking.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Greg with Original 72 Creative. I am the other half of this week's Geek Speak, and I run Original 72 Creative. We're a full-service website, graphic design, and Vancouver.
Awesome. And so as I said at the top, we're going to be talking about Google Tag Manager. So, which is something I have really grown to appreciate in the last year and a bit, maybe 2 years, is really grown to appreciate it for helping streamline adding marketing tags.
I get questions from clients all the time about, can you add this tag to my site and can you add that tag to my site? Whether they're doing like Facebook stuff or it's, setting up their Google Analytics or whatever they're doing. And because I don't control all of their stuff, a lot of the times I'm just throwing it directly in the header or footer or wherever it needs to be with the theme. But the fact that you can use Tag Manager to streamline all of that is incredible, and I hope everybody gets out of this that they need to have Tag Manager set up, and I'm really looking forward to you telling us more about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you touched on one of the first use case for it that just makes everyone's lives better is that as like a business owner, you don't want to be mucking about in the code. You want to be just adding the tag and adding it super quickly. What Tag Manager does is you install it once with the head and the body code, and then from there, you'll be just being able to deploy it super easy and super effectively, and you don't have to do a lot of debugging.
I went through the process, like I was saying before we came on, because I've been in Tag Manager before, and I set it up, and I don't know if I don't know if I was in there just playing around, looking at what it was and how to use it and stuff like that. But I realized I'd never actually started using it for my site, so I switched over and started using it. Inserted my Google Analytics code that way instead of the way I was doing it before, which allowed me to get rid of a plugin that I was using with my site to do that. So now I don't have to. And again, like I said earlier, now I'm set up to just use this for anything I need to insert on my site.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also, you can, like you said at the top as well, it could be Facebook Pixel. So they have one that's just called custom HTML, or some people even build their own integrations, like Hotjar. They did one as well. And so they've built their own little integration into Tag Manager that makes it super easy. And also, like you said, you can set up, one of the really interesting parts is you can set up specific tags to fire on specific pages really easily. So when we talked about this before, one that I like is you can create remarketing audiences. So anytime in your URL the word SEO, maybe you want to have them on your SEO remarketing. So that gives you a lot of flexibility rather than go through like on this page, like you just say anytime this word shows up in the title or the page URL, you can add it there, and it makes your life a lot easier where you can do a lot of really cool, flexible things. And it's just, and you focus more on doing the marketing rather than learning how to do the coding to do the marketing as well.
So did I take over your starting, or did we have a process that you had? Because I know you taught a course just last week on this. Yeah. So, and I know you were going to tell us all about it. So
Yeah.
give us the run through. Start from the beginning and
Yeah.
take
So
us through it.
yeah, so basically the big thing that you have that, as we mentioned, it's a way that centralizes all your tags. So it works with Google Analytics, because when we talked about it the first time, you were like, is this replacing the Google Analytics or is it in addition to? And it's in addition to. So it houses your Google Analytics and then also uses its ID for setting up things like events, which we'll go into a little bit after this. But so it's housing all of these tags and then deploying them when you tell them to. So that goes into the three big concepts you have to keep track of with Tag Manager, which is one is the what is going to fire, so that's the tag, and then there's the trigger, so that's when it's going to fire. So you tell it, all pages, or like we said, specific pages, and then the other one that's gonna is variable, and a variable it's kind of hard to really describe. You'll see it once you kind of use the process a couple times, but it's basically kind of a fill-in. So it could be
like if a product was added to the cart, you could trigger to follow something.
well,
Is that kind of what it would do?
yeah, or say someone fills out a form, you can Tag Manager can actually capture it. You can set it up so it can capture that information and then push it to the data layer, which I'll describe in a minute. But it's basically, you can capture that information. So it's a bit of a variable, right? You don't know what they're going to put down for their name in that spot, but it's the form name, and capture that. You don't know what that information is. It's a variable. It's going to change, but that would be a way that it would be like a little bit of information that it's anytime it gets filled in here, take that and do something else with it. Yeah. So, and does that help with it as well? Yeah. Okay. Or another one is the URL. That's a common one that I do a lot of. If you have, like, say in the footer, you always have a tel link, so a phone number link, but it's always the same, but you want to know what page it is. That way you could grab the page URL. So that anytime that's clicked, you can actually go back and look at which page they were on when they clicked on it, because that could be really important information for you, that it's like, oh, this page has done a really good job at converting people. So there could be, and it's super important information for you as a business owner to know, like the specific service page. They were always clicking on the telephone link. So put more money into that, because you're going to want to keep track of that.
And can it get so granular where the telephone link was clicked in the header or in the footer or somewhere within the page, or just the page itself?
It would just be in the page itself for that part, unless you set up, like, you'd have to set up, maybe you'd give it a different class. Like, because you can also go after the class of a button or a link. So maybe you want to say, like, button header, and then you'll give it that specific
phone or footer phone.
Yeah. And you can just put like a dead, like, it's a CSS class that doesn't do anything, and it's just so that you could do tracking to it. So you could definitely do it that way as well, which I think it's a similar process to how email marketing usually does it. If you have multiple links, they'll say, like, oh, this was your top link, this was your middle link, and so that way you can kind of see which ones were converting. So, and then one other major concept that's a little hard to describe, and trying to say it like in this context and alive is a little difficult, but it's the concept of the data layer. And so what that is kind of how Tag Manager is capturing, like we said earlier, like when a form gets filled out, you can capture that information. It's going to go to the data layer, and then Tag Manager is going to read the data layer and pull out whatever it needs to. So sometimes you might have it that someone fills out a form. Maybe you want to get it automatically added to MailChimp, for example. I'm just spitballing here, but so you want it to capture that and then automatically get pushed to MailChimp. And so it knows that, oh, hey, we got a form email. When that happens, so that sets off the trigger. When that happens, then do this other thing that's going to be a trigger that sends that information somewhere. But the data layer is there just kind of capturing the information, and it also helps Google Analytics, right? Because it does a lot of kind of the, a new session has started. They came from Google Organic. They're on an iPhone. Like, all that information is going to be captured in the data layer as well.
So it's basically extending the information above and beyond what your analytics, the base analytics, gives you, so that you can really get more customized in knowing more about what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is built, even if you don't install, like if you just install Google Analytics and you go to read the code, it is a tag manager data layer that is actually running for the analytics. So even if you're not using it, like they've repurposed that code anyway. So because it's doing the same functionality, just like you said, they're extending it out so that you have a chance to input like, oh, I want this to be pushed there. And then when that's pushed to the data layer, I want this thing to happen. So you can set up a lot of information like that as well. It's just, and I mean, that's really advanced stuff as well. You wouldn't need to be stressed about it, but I definitely want people aware that it exists and how it kind of interacts with the different layers.
And then once all of this stuff is tracking, I don't know if you have other things before we move on to what I'm about to ask about, but I'm curious about it since you're talking about it. Is this new information that gets tracked in the data layer? Am I seeing this in Tag Manager, or am I seeing this in my Google Analytics? And is there something that needs to be done so that I then can see this extra information that we're collecting?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, which it definitely leads me on to one of the benefits of using Tag Manager. And one of the really good things about it is that they have a debugger or a preview mode. And what that does is it sets up a little window. It uses the Chrome extension Tag Assistant. And what it does is it will connect with it and it will run on the page and it will track all the little clicks that are happening. And then what you can do is go to that page where the debugger is on, and then you can actually see, oh, this click, what was the CSS of this click, this element that was clicked, because you can have specific things that you're tracking. So is the information there? And then you can also go through with checking your data layer there in the debug in the preview mode. You raised a really good point that I wanted to touch on as well about it, is that the data layer, the information that's in there is very temporary. If you don't act on moving it to another location right away, it will get deleted very quickly. It's very ethereal. It's very passing. They refresh the page, it's gone. So you need to have it set up properly at the time of, because it doesn't stick around. It's just, as soon as it refreshes, it's empty again, and it goes back to collecting on the next page. And so that's definitely one that you would want to keep track of. So one of the other big things that I really like about it, especially if you are working in teams, that is really awesome, is it has version control. So that's something that comes from software engineering, where it's basically a file that says like, Susie updated it 2 weeks ago and added this to it. And it has like what was before and what was after. And so it's a way for you to keep track of things as you're, messing around. And especially if you break something, then you can go back and be like, it was working here. Now it's not working. What changed? And then you can see exactly what changed. And then it also has things like approval process. So maybe you have a new person. You want them to like set up a couple tags, but maybe not launch them in case they break something. Then you can like set up approval processes as well. So that's super useful for teams, especially large teams, that you can have a really streamlined process. Most of the time, if you're an individual person, I still would fill in like, added Google Analytics 4 tag, like just name it, because you just want to have some little record so that you can quickly see, oh, this is when I did that. But you don't need to do really detailed ones or approval processes. And then the last one is that, which we've kind of touched on in a lot of ways, but it's also super useful for small teams in the sense that it will save you a lot of time. You don't need to go reach out to Greg and bother Greg with setting up a tag in the header. This just streamlines it so that they don't need to bug you. You don't need to be bugged about doing something that's kind of annoying for you to go in and add each time, and then they can go and do it themselves.
That kind of brings me to a quick note that I do think Tag Manager is a little bit more technical than your average person who probably just has a site and wants to install their analytics tag or what have you. You do need a little bit more technical chops to set these things up and connect it to your site and have everything working. I would say the majority of my clients I would be the one setting up Tag Manager for their site, and they would be like, "Hey, we need to add this," and they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So there is that. And so, what are your thoughts on learning Tag Manager and how easy it is for people? Do you think most people could pick it up pretty good?
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. It does take some more sophistication than just being completely green. Like, you do need to have some understanding of like what kind of information you want out of your website and how to kind of be able to think that through and be able to capture that information. Because it does, yeah, you are correct that it does take a little bit. There is some technical requirements. It's obviously less complicated than actually coding in some of the event tracking and stuff like that. But it's definitely one where, yeah, I wouldn't consider it for the beginners. The biggest thing that I would say that's happened, especially in the last year, is the amount of resources on YouTube of really good high quality tutorials has really exploded and proliferated. And there are some really good guys at Analytics Mania, Measure School, and Loves Data. Those are all three guys that do a really good job at doing explainers, and just even basic all the way to much more sophisticated ones, especially Analytics Mania, because he's a web developer by trade. So he comes at it much more from the pushing stuff to the data layer, grabbing that stuff. So, the amount
we'll post a couple of links to some of these YouTubers.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you can see some of the of this in action, since we're not showing anything today. So.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a really good point, and I'll definitely add it at the end of the day, and at the end of this one today. And so, yeah, it's definitely the amount of information makes it a lot better than when I first started learning, because it was just there wasn't as much about it on how to do really detailed and specific things or what are different ways you could use it. But now I would say it would be a really good time to get started, because they have a lot of really good beginners and intro levels for getting people with their feet wet. Again, it does take a bit of sophistication to get to know that you want this part and know hey, this is a thing that's going to help me do this part. Don't just learn it because you want to learn it, but learn it because you want to extend a little bit more of your ads. And it's really well suited for marketers is the main person, I would say, over business owners. It is helpful, but it's marketers are the people who will get the most out of this.
And so I don't know, you explained it earlier, but can you just clarify, when Tag Manager triggers and things that all of these extra things that you want to see what's happening on your site are set up in Tag Manager, you are going back into Tag Manager to see the results, or that's in Analytics, or is that in Data Studio where you're reporting on this many people, did this trigger that you set up in Tag Manager?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And so the way I think of it is kind of Tag Manager is collecting all this ton of information, and it basically the tags are asking for information. So say Google Analytics, you'll have it firing on every page. So every time that information gets captured in the data layer, Tag Manager just gives it to Google Analytics, and then it sends it off, and then Google Analytics will do the analysis and it will send it there. Tag Manager is just collecting the information, and then you may have specific triggers that fire. So it's hey, they've made it to the thank you page, fire the Google Ads conversion tracking tag,
so that you can see this information in your Google Analytics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Google Analytics is still going to be your home base. This just, like you said, extends out. That gives you way more control over how that information is being collected, rather than Google Analytics just sort of passively consuming all this stuff. You could have specific things. One of the really good ones that I really come to appreciate is the Google Analytics event tracking. So as we said earlier, like a mail to link or a tell link, your phone or your email that you've got on your website, those could be super important if you're doing lead generation. You're going to want to know that people clicked on that. Setting it up in Tag Manager is way easier than coding it, which is a pain. I was not a big fan of it myself. And so this makes it much simpler and much clearer for any person to just quickly set up an event tracking that, anytime this link gets clicked, track it and then push that to Google Analytics. And it's very simple to get that started.
Awesome. That clarifies it for me. That's what I assumed, but
Yeah.
I just wasn't quite sure. Because I know you and Pip are huge with Data Studio, and Data Studio like is nothing to do with Tag Manager, but Data Studio is more an extension for reporting your analytics, which is amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's part of the 4 that make up the marketing platform. So as we talked about, the analytics, the Tag Manager, Data Studio. So Google Analytics is analyzing the data, Tag Manager collects it, and then Data Studio does reporting. And then the 4th one is Google Optimize for doing A/B tests. And it's a really cool platform as well. We'll talk about it sometime later. It's one I haven't used as much as the other ones, but it's definitely really cool for having a free tool to do A/B tests and have it all connected.
And so you can also do A/B testing in Tag Manager? Or
no, that would all be handled by Google Optimize. So that will do, that will handle it all in there. And then you would load the tag into Tag Manager, and they've got a good spot for it. And then they all connect together in the back end of analytics.
Cool. Where are we going next with Tag Manager, or can I ask a question?
Feel free. No. Let's.
I don't want to ruin your flow of things that you want to get out there, but for me, I just have tons of questions. And
fire away. Yeah.
I guess a big question and something hopefully lots of people would want to know is, what are some of the really basic triggers that you would definitely want to have set up in Tag Manager for a website?
That is a really good question. So definitely ones that I would want to keep track of are, as we talked about, the mail to link and the tell link. Those are pretty much standard for me, that I would want to have those going. The other big ones are if you have if Google Ads and you're wanting it to fire on the thank you page, as we talked about earlier, you'll have it set up where it's like, when the page URL contains and then it has thank you, then fire this Google Ads conversion tag. So these are some basic ones I would get started with. More so the mail to and tell link. Those are definitely ones that I've pretty much every business we've worked with wants that tracked.
And then I assume things like video views on your site is something that you might be able to do, or downloads of PDFs or documents that you provide to people.
Yeah. Scroll depth. Sorry.
Those are other basic ones that would probably be ones that are sort of the thing that people might want to set up for sure, because that a lot of the times people have that kind of content.
Yeah, 100%. And that's definitely one that, clicking on a PDF link, video views, that's one that is built in, has a bunch of video view functions. There's a form submission, but I find that one to be a little finicky to get started with, but it's definitely super powerful. Form gets captured, you can capture information off of it, and it has a bunch of other functionality there. It's really good as well. The other good one is scroll depth. It does out of the box, you can set up a tag that does like 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%, and then sends that information to your Google Analytics.
Yeah, a much better indication than the time on a page, for instance.
Yeah, especially as people build longer blog posts, and if you have email signups that are happening in like a giveaway that's like, say, 50% down the page, and that they're getting to that 50%, but they're not converting, then those could be other indications for your funnel as well that you might want to be keeping track of.
Yeah. No, I think for anybody who really wants to know more about what's happening on their site and how it's happening or why something's not happening on their site, should definitely get more into Tag Manager and set up some of these triggers to be able to see what's really happening.
Yeah, exactly. And the big one that why you want to be setting up these events in and sending them to Google Analytics is because Google Analytics is also tracking where they came from. So you can see that, all these phone calls that I'm getting are all from Google Organic, and you might be spending a bunch of money on Facebook ads and it's not getting you leads. Well, this could be ways that you can modify your funnel and keeping track of the source and medium and how it's affecting your marketing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah. What else you got?
Yeah, what else I got? I don't know what else you got. We got 4 minutes left, and I think I've got a pretty clear picture, and if I do, I think other people probably do.
Yeah, it's definitely it is. So one thing to bear in mind, one exception I would put in is that watch out with doing it with Shopify, because a lot of the default settings aren't really conducive to, you don't have access to the body section in checkout unless you pay for the plus plan, which is enterprise, and probably not a lot of people are doing that. So there's a extra 2-step you have to do in order to do that, get it set up there. And I'll see if we can link a video that we created for how to do that in Shopify. But it's definitely one that I want people to be aware of, because some people have tried to add it, and there's a specific spot that will really help, but you can't get it to track everything the whole way through. But you can still do, you can still set up like it to be in the head code the whole way through the checkout, which can be super useful for people if they want to be tracking the thank you page or the order complete page and have like an ads trigger, conversion tag trigger there. And
cool, good point.
Yeah. Sorry if it's a bit technical, but it's one that I just didn't want people to go and trying to get set up on Shopify.
Yeah, because I noticed the other day when I was finalizing mine, I saw that a bit of the code needs to go in the header, and then a bit of it needs to go right in the beginning of the body tag. So it's important that you have access to that so that you can actually insert that code in there.
Yeah, 100%. And it's definitely it needs to be in the body, that little body text, and it's doing a lot of like when someone clicks on something, it's tracking a lot of that information versus the head in code information, which is just kind of firing tags.
Awesome. Now you taught this just last week, you were saying?
Yeah, we taught it as part of our mastermind, and this is where we were pairing it with our Google Analytics to kind of get people, especially marketers, getting into being able to deploy the tags and also do set up event tracking. So we're also going to have a PDF that goes with this that we're just finalizing right now, and we're going to be putting out like it's how to do event tracking, and just does a step-by-step on with using Google Tag Manager, and it's just doing a simple, finding a button, like we did a submit button on a contact form 7, and then creating an event out of that.
Awesome, and that'll be available for people to download, or you'll make it available on your site at some point for. Yeah.
I'll put a link to it in the comments, or put a link to it in here with in the description, along with the information about the other resources that we have as well.
Cool.
Awesome. So I think that we've covered it today. It's been another fun time talking about Google Tag Manager. If they have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Of course, like I said, just a second ago, I'm going to put all the resources in the description that we kind of talked about, and then I'll put a link to the PDF for how to get started with event tracking in Google Tag Manager. It's a little more complicated, so we also have one that's setting up your Google Analytics 4 in Tag Manager, because it's a really super easy way to do it is through Tag Manager right now.
Yeah, and anyone, like I said, anyone who wants to insert their Google Analytics code into their WordPress site, I constantly come across this. People are like, "What plugin should I use?" And get rid of the plugin just to insert code. Set up Google Tag Manager, or have someone set it up for you, and then just put that little bit of code in your header and body, and no plugin, and you can insert whatever you like from that point forward.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I am Phelan Lewis at Seymour Digital Media. It's been great talking with you, Greg.
Yep. Looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, and I don't remember what is next week, but we'll be sure to post about it and let you guys know.
I'll change the header very soon with the next topic for April.
Okay, awesome. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks again. Thanks for watching. Let us know if you're watching a replay with #replay. Okay, bye for now.
Bye.